The morning sun barely touched the skyline of Washington, D.C. when Ibrahim Traoré stepped out of the sleek black car. His West African outfit, a flowing, golden-embroidered robe, rippled softly in the spring breeze. To many, it was just a beautiful traditional garment. But to Ibrahim, it was a symbol of something much deeper: African pride, history, and sovereignty. Inside the grand hall of the International Peace Summit, diplomats and leaders prepared for another day of stiff handshakes and careful words. But Ibrahim's presence was different. He was a leader who carried the weight of an entire continent's hopes. As he walked toward the entrance, a private American security guard near the door glanced at him. A cruel smile crept across the guard's face. Without knowing who Ibrahim was, he let out a sharp, mocking laugh. "Look at this guy. What's he wearing? Is this a costume?" Ibrahim kept walking, calm and proud. But the guard's laugh echoed louder than the bustling crowd. No one knew this small moment would become the spark for a global storm. The guard's laughter was meant to belittle, but it only revealed his ignorance. What he didn't know was that the man before him was Ibrahim Traoré, one of Africa's youngest, most respected leaders, a man who had led his country through fierce challenges and fought tirelessly for peace and dignity. As Ibrahim passed security, a whisper started spreading through the crowd. Whispers turned into gasps. Security officers and diplomats suddenly stepped aside, nodding respectfully. Within minutes, the atmosphere changed completely. The guard's laughter died in his throat when he realized this was no ordinary visitor. Inside, Ibrahim was escorted through halls usually locked tight for only the most trusted diplomats. Cameras flashed. Officials stood up and applauded as he entered the main conference room. A standing ovation filled the air. The guard, now distant and pale, watched helplessly from the side. What had started as mockery now became a moment of reverence and humiliation. The private guard felt a crushing weight on his chest. His joke had backfired in a way he never expected. The man he had mocked was now being celebrated as a hero, a beacon of hope. Desperation grew inside him. Without thinking, he stepped forward, his voice trembling. Cameras caught every moment as the guard dropped to his knees, tears spilling down his cheeks. "I'm so sorry," he begged. "Please forgive me." The room fell silent. The world watched in stunned disbelief. Ibrahim, calm but moved, extended his hand, not to scold but to lift the guard up. "We all make mistakes," he said softly. "But respect is the first step to change." That single act, mercy from a great leader, set off a wave of emotion that swept through millions watching live worldwide. Few people outside Africa truly understood the weight Ibrahim Traoré carried. Since becoming a leader, his days had been filled with struggles, not just against enemies, but against doubt, exhaustion, and a world that often overlooked his continent. That morning in Washington, D.C., his traditional outfit wasn't just clothing. It was a statement. It said, "I am proud. I am here. Africa is here." Inside the conference room, Ibrahim spoke softly but firmly to those who would listen. He talked about peace, respect, and the need for a new partnership between Africa and the world. His words carried the weight of hope and history intertwined. Outside, the guard sat quietly, overwhelmed by everything unfolding. His laughter had shattered the moment's dignity, but Ibrahim's grace had shown a power far greater than any suit or badge. This summit was supposed to be routine, but now it was a turning point. Everyone could feel it, even if they didn't yet understand it fully. In the days after the summit, the guard became a figure of intense scrutiny. News outlets replayed the footage of his fall to his knees. Some called it humiliation, others called it a lesson. But for the guard, it was something deeply personal. He began to research Ibrahim Traoré's life, reading about his struggles and vision. The more he learned, the more ashamed he felt for his earlier cruelty. He wrote letters of apology, not just to Ibrahim, but to the world. He spoke publicly about how pride and ignorance could blind a person and promised to change. In a surprising move, Ibrahim invited the Guard to visit his country, to see firsthand the spirit of Africa beyond the stereotypes. The Guard's journey toward redemption had only just begun. Back in Africa, news of the Washington, D.C. incident spread like wildfire. For many, it was a proud moment, a young leader standing tall in a world that often ignored their voices. Families gathered around televisions, tears streaming down their faces, watching a story of dignity, forgiveness, and hope. Children asked their parents, "Who is Ibrahim Traoré? Why did he forgive the Guard?" And parents answered, "Because respect is stronger than hate, because Africa is rising." The summit's cameras had captured more than diplomacy. They had captured a moment that would inspire millions. But beneath the hope, tension simmered. Not everyone in the world was ready to accept this new power. Forces that feared change watched closely, waiting for a chance to undermine it. Ibrahim knew this was only the beginning. The summit's applause had barely faded when Ibrahim Traoré returned to his hotel room, exhausted yet restless. His heart was heavy, not from triumph, but from the knowledge that respect earned so publicly could be so fragile. Behind the smiles and handshakes, there were whispers in dark corridors. Some diplomats saw his presence as a challenge to the old order. Powerful interests feared what his voice represented, a confident Africa demanding equal footing. That night, Ibrahim stared at the traditional robe hanging by the window. It symbolized centuries of pride, but also the battles ahead. He thought of every child back home, every family hoping for a future free from poverty and war. His mission was clear: to carry his people's dignity beyond the summit's walls. But the price was high. Meanwhile, the Guard boarded a plane to West Africa, his heart pounding with nervous anticipation. This was no longer just about him. It was about healing the wounds his ignorance had caused. Landing in the warm air of Ibrahim's homeland, the Guard was struck by the vibrancy and resilience everywhere he looked. Children laughing, elders sharing stories, a community bound by deep roots and fierce hope. When he met Ibrahim, the leader's eyes held no bitterness, only a quiet strength that stunned him. "I want to understand," the Guard said softly. "Teach me." Ibrahim smiled gently. "Respect begins with understanding. Let me show you." Together they visited villages, schools, and fields. The Guard listened, learned, and slowly shed the layers of prejudice he had carried. Back on screens worldwide, millions watched the growing bond between the leader and the Guard. The Guard's transformation became a symbol, a sign that change was possible, even in the darkest hearts. Families wept openly, moved by the raw humanity unfolding before them. This was more than politics. It was a lesson in forgiveness, humility, and hope. Social media exploded with hashtags celebrating African pride and the power of second chances. For once, the world wasn't divided by hate, but united by a shared, powerful emotion. But as the Guard walked alongside Ibrahim, he knew their journey was far from over. For every tear shed, there were battles still raging beneath the surface. In a quiet village meeting hall, Ibrahim and the Guard sat side by side, surrounded by people who had endured years of hardship. The Guard's hands trembled as he spoke about his mistake, about the laughter that had caused pain far beyond what he had imagined. The villagers listened, some with tears in their eyes, others with guarded hearts. Forgiveness wasn't easy here. Wounds ran deep from years of being misunderstood and ignored. But Ibrahim's voice, calm and steady, carried a powerful message. "Forgiveness is not weakness," he said. "It is the strongest bridge we can build between souls." The Guard nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He had come seeking redemption, but what he found was a family willing to heal together. That moment became a turning point, not just for them, but for all watching around the world. Despite the hopeful scenes in Africa, back in Washington, D.C., forces less welcoming of change began to mobilize. Lobbyists and politicians whispered in shadowed rooms, uneasy with the rising influence of leaders like Ibrahim. They painted the story as a mere spectacle, ignoring the heart behind it. Yet the public saw through the smoke. The summit had sparked something dangerous for the old world: truth. Ibrahim's message of dignity and equality threatened long-held power structures. But he refused to back down. Each step forward was met with resistance, yet his resolve only grew stronger. The guard, now changed, stood firmly by his side, a living testament that understanding could overcome even the deepest divides. One afternoon, Ibrahim walked through a schoolyard, surrounded by children in bright uniforms. A little girl, eyes wide and curious, tugged at his robe. "Will Africa always be proud like you?" she asked softly. Ibrahim knelt down, looking into her hopeful gaze. "Yes," he said firmly, "because every one of you carries that pride. You are the future, stronger, wiser, and ready." The girl smiled, a spark lighting her face. For Ibrahim, this was the true victory. Not the applause or the politics, but the hope planted in young hearts. That hope carried a heavy promise: to protect, to nurture, and to never let go. As cameras caught this tender moment, millions watching felt their own tears well up, moved by the simplicity and power of a child's question. Late one evening, Ibrahim sat alone in his hotel room, the weight of the summit still pressing on his shoulders. The world had seen the moments of grace and forgiveness, but beneath the surface, danger lurked. Whispers reached him, threats from those who feared the rising voice of Africa. Some wanted to silence him, to erase the symbol he had become. Yet Ibrahim's spirit would not break. He thought of the children, the families, the millions who believed in a future where respect and equality reigned. He picked up his phone and sent a simple message to his team: "We move forward. No fear." In that quiet room, a leader steeled himself against shadows, knowing the hardest battles were still to come. The guard, once a figure of mockery, was now a symbol of transformation, but his journey was far from over. As he traveled back home, he faced whispers and stares from colleagues who hadn't forgotten his moment of humiliation. Some doubted his change, others mocked it, but the guard held his head high. He carried Ibrahim's lessons in his heart and the promise to stand for respect and understanding. When he returned to the security post, he didn't seek revenge or silence. Instead, he became a voice for change, training others, sharing stories, breaking down walls of prejudice. His tears on that summit day had been real, but his strength after was even stronger. Around the globe, millions waited anxiously for the next chapter of this unfolding story. Social media was alive with debates, tears, and hope. News outlets played the video of the guard's kneeling apology over and over. Children in classrooms watched in silence. Parents whispered about respect and pride. But the summit was not just a story of one man's mistake or forgiveness. It was a mirror reflecting a world struggling to see each other's humanity. As the days passed, tension built. Would the world embrace this new dawn, or would old fears pull it back into darkness? Everyone held their breath, waiting to see what Ibrahim Traoré would do next. The day of the summit's closing ceremony arrived. Ibrahim stood before the assembly, dressed once again in his traditional robe, but his eyes told a story no fabric could. He spoke not just to politicians or diplomats, but to every person watching around the world. His voice was steady, filled with both strength and compassion. "We come from different lands, different stories," he said, "but we all share the same dream: peace, respect, and hope for our children." He paused, looking directly at the cameras that would carry his message far beyond the room. Let us remember the guard who fell to his knees, not as a moment of shame, but as a moment of learning and change. Let that humility be a lesson for us all. Tears welled up in the eyes of many, some quietly sobbing, moved by the rare purity of his words. This was a leader who led not by power alone, but by the strength of his heart. The summit ended, but the ripple effects continued. The guard returned home a changed man, no longer just a security officer, but a symbol of transformation. His story inspired others to confront their own biases. Ibrahim returned to Africa, greeted by cheering crowds. Children held signs of hope, mothers wept tears of joy. A continent felt seen and heard like never before. International leaders began conversations they once avoided. The summit had cracked open a door, and no one could close it again. Most importantly, people everywhere remembered the lessons of respect, forgiveness, and pride. The moment in Washington, D.C. was no longer just a story. It was a movement. Months later, Ibrahim visited the little girl from the schoolyard again. This time, she ran into his arms with the same bright eyes and unstoppable hope. "We did it, didn't we?" she whispered. "Yes," Ibrahim smiled, "because the future belongs to those who believe in it." He looked out over the crowd, children, families, leaders, and saw more than faces. He saw the promise of a world where dignity and respect could change everything. As the sun set behind him, Ibrahim knew this was only the beginning. Africa's story was no longer one of silence or sorrow. It was a story of strength, forgiveness, and endless hope. Thank you for following this journey with us. If this story moved you, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment below telling us what touched your heart the most. Your support helps us bring more powerful stories like Ibrahim Traoré's to the world. Let's keep the conversation alive, because respect, hope, and change begin with us all.